Starships are meant to fly, and we're going to help them do it with scripting. That's right, R2. Let's go! Yes, all right. So here we are. We are aboard the X-Wing that I built and scripted in Horizon Worlds on Oculus. And look at that, it flies. It shoots. Oh, it can turn. It's got this cockpit here. It's got health. And yeah, it's pretty great. I'm going to talk about how you can build and script your own Starship and all that goes into that. Now, in our past videos, there it is. In our past videos, we talked about lightsabers that ended up getting pretty long. And so I'm going to try to do better this time. I am going to just talk about the basic flight mechanics, how you create that, kind of how you can tweak it a little bit to get different types of flight, like I did in the TIE Fighter, like I did for the Land Speeder over there. And then we'll talk about shooting and other, bells and whistles. Well, actually, literal bells and whistles in another video. So we're just going to stay focused on how to make this beautiful X-Wing fly. All right. So here we are in build mode. And you can kind of see the whole model here. It's basically like an action figure, but you can also jump into it. It's kind of great. The actual model is based on two different things, right? So you have the ship itself everywhere here. And then if you zoom in, you have this control rod. This is what's going to control the direction, the angle, the shooting, everything else. So these are really the two components that make this up. And when you go into the script, you will see just how I've done this. And again, we're just going to talk about the general motion of it, which is actually shockingly simple. So how do we make that fly? Well, again, we have to set some things up from the start. As we did with our lightsabers, we have a return function so that once you get in, if you let go, it goes back to its starting position. Otherwise, it'll just stay up in the sky. You have to do this for both the platform, that's the X-Wing, and the rod itself. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the rod back. So what are we doing when we're starting? We're going to set the start position, and that's a vector variable that we created over here. You're going to have the start position and the start rotation. We're going to have a rod rotation and rod position as well. And you're going to set both of those to the position of the platform and to the position of the rod, right? So you do that for both the start position and the start rotation. And that's basically it. Again, we have some health stuff going on here, but we're not going to talk about that now. Then I went ahead and created a return script. Again, so when you release the rod, everything's going to go back to its original spot. This is really the exact same thing that I did with the lightsabers. And if you want me to make a separate video just on how to make a return script, I can absolutely do that. Just leave a note in the comments. It's a pretty basic thing that you're going to get really good at because you kind of need it for anything that has motion. So that's just the general return script. No big deal there. You can screenshot it. Don't worry, you can get this. All right. So I also have this kind of section about what happens when you first pick up the rod. I'm transferring ownership of all this stuff because I did make this a local script. You absolutely do not have to do that. So maybe I'll talk about it in a later video, but let's ignore it for now. Let's just keep things simple. All right. So here is where we get to flying. When the index trigger is pressed while grabbed by player, send loop 2. There's no reason that this isn't loop 1. It's just because when I made the script, it's loop 2. So that's just an event. So this loop 2 event, that's going to be the entire flying event. And it's going to be based on when you click the trigger. That's what's going to make it go. Again, that's just kind of the initiating for the entire flight event. And then the flight event, look at this. It's literally just this. These 4 lines, this is the entire flight script. It is so easy and so straightforward. Look what we're doing. move the platform by the forward direction of self times the movement multiplier over speed. So this requires a little bit of description. The move function I think makes pretty much sense. It's going to be move. It's going to be move by over time. That's what's going to give us this speed. We want the forward direction, we want the upward direction, and then later we're going to get into the rotation, but look how simple that is. Anyway, for the movement multiplier and the speed, that is what's going to control our speed overall. The movement multiplier is a number, and here I have it at 5, but you can set it to whatever you want, and the number basically multiplies whatever input it gets from the self. In this case, that is going to be the rod, though I have it as self. Don't worry about that. It's going to take that input number and just expand it, because otherwise it'll be very small. It's not going to move very far. So we're going to have a movement multiplier that will make it go a little bit farther every time this event runs, which is going to be pretty often. And then we have the speed. That's the delay sorry, that's not the delay. That's how quickly it will get to the position that we're telling it to go. So actually, this is an inverse speed variable. So the lower that this speed is, the faster it's going to go. Now, I'll get into this in a second, but Horizon Worlds really likes to kick you out of flying and moving objects. So if you make this too fast, if the movement multiplier is too big, if the speed variable is too small, thus making the speed faster, you're just going to get knocked out. It's going to zoom past you and you're going to fall to the ground. So this 0.5 for speed and 5 for movement multiplier, that's kind of the best balance I found for like smoothness of flight. But you could absolutely tinker with this and see what works for you. And in addition, for some of the other flying machines where there's a bit less rotation, you can actually up this or put this down and go faster without falling out. So what are we doing? Again, for the flight, we're just simply going to move the platform by its own forward direction, or the forward direction of the rod, which is also running the script, times that movement multiplier over that much speed. We're going to do the same thing for upward position. And last, this is again, so easy. Just rotate the platform to the rotation of rod. And then after that, we're going to send this loop, that's loop 2, to itself. So it just keeps reading the inputs and keeps flying. And then the last thing we're going to do is when the index trigger is released, remember the index trigger is what is going to be triggering this loop to go, simply stop the physical motion, cancel sending the loop. Now, once in a while, it doesn't actually read this cancel, so you just have to click the trigger again and it'll read it. But again, these several lines of script, this is what's going to create the entire flying platform. And again, this is the full rotation model. So as you'll see, if I can come up here, when I grab this rod, so you can actually fly it. You can actually fly it like a drone. But watch here. So it's going to fly. You see that? It just moves in the exact direction of the rod. It just matches it 1-to-1. You can have battles this way too, and it's pretty fun. Basically like playing with extremely expensive and complicated action figures. Anyway, and so watch, and now it'll come back because I released it. Cool. So that's basically it for the flight. Let me get into, on a simpler level, exactly how this all comes together and some of the pitfalls. And then after that, I'm going to show you some of these other scripts which just really modify this rotation so that you get a steadier flight. But that gets a little bit tricky, and honestly, I don't fully understand it myself. It just happens to work after quite a lot of tinkering. Okay, so let's say you want to create your own Starship, and you want to use this script, or you want to build a script exactly like this. Totally up to you. Well, if you've imported this world, you can actually go in to one of the models. So you click in to zoom in, and look, you can delete all this stuff, and you can really just leave yourself with a platform and then build off of that. We're obviously not going to do that here, so I'm going to thumb over to undo. I think that's it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So yeah, we're not going to mess with this too much, but you Absolutely could. But let's say you wanted to build it from scratch. How would you do that? Okay, so what do you need? You need two things. You need your platform, right, as we discussed. There we go. Let's just make it about that big. Let's bring our little guy over here for a size reference. So here we have our platform. Okay, this is what's going to be flying. And then we need a control rod. So let's grab that. Doesn't matter what we use, but let's do this here. Okay, we'll make this about hand-sized. So now, that's it. This is what's going to fly. We're also going to, let's just put some very, very basic wings on this so we kind of get a sense of the direction, because we're going to have to deal with some rotation issues. I'm going to use the snap tool. Just snap it. Let's just snap it to the middle. Thumb over to duplicate. Look at that. I'm going to put it on the other side, again, using the snap tool to keep things even. Not that it matters. Oh, I duplicated accidentally. No big deal. We just delete it. And we're going to take this whole thing. We're going to group it. Okay, so this is going to be our group. Oop, there we go. So now we have our rod. We have our platform. Super simple. We are just going to go into these and we are going to attach our script. X-Wing script 2. Attach that. X-Wing script 2. We are going to attach that. All right. And now we got to tell it what it is. Like now, obviously, you see all of these other variables, the lasers, the sounds. None of that's on here, so we're just going to ignore all of it. This group is the platform, though, so we are simply going to go to the bottom here. We're going to tell it, hey, that's the platform. And we're going to tell the platform, hey, this is the rod. I've also had it so I kind of tell the object what it is. Again, I'm not sure if this is the right way to do it, but I do it anyway because it seems to work. It's probably a little overkill, but you know, tinker with it, see what happens. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to make our rod. You know, let's just rename this rod. You don't have to do this at all, but I find it's really beneficial because you just, once you see all these things around, like you want to keep track of them. So, and we'll call the group platform. It's actually going to change automatically down below. And so it'll all stay connected, which is super cool. Again, it's just, you know, it's just easier. It's just easier to keep track of stuff. Sorry, where was I before? We were going to make the rod grabbable, right? Because we need to pick it up. We need to give it the input. So let's go back. And now immediately something's going to happen. I'm going to click the trigger. Whoa, okay. So now we see that that is wrong, but that's totally okay. So what's happening here? I'm going to let go. It goes back here. So what's happening is it is reading the up direction as forward, and we obviously don't want that. But you got to do these tests because there's just a little bit of adjustment that you have to do. Again, if you just go back and use one of these models, I've already done that for you. But but when you make your own, you kind of have to line it up a little bit more. So what do we know? We know it's saying this up is forward. So you know what we're going to do? We're just going to turn this. That's it. That's all we had to do. Just turn this. It's still going to be grabbable. Now let's see if it works better. Look at that. And it matches 1-to-1. Perfect. Now, I was actually hoping that the platform would get a little bit messed up because I wanted to show you something else. But let's say the platform, when it launched, was kind of going off on the side. This happens sometimes. So if the ship is kind of going off in the wrong direction, you have to change the orientation of the rod. If the ship is going in the correct direction but is kind of flipped, what you basically have to do is zoom into the group. You're going to have to select, oh, come on now. You're going to have to select, okay, stuff is not cooperating. You're going to have to select everything and change it to the correct orientation. So let's say I make it incorrect now. So sometimes you basically start your you start your flight and you're like, oh my God, what's happening? What's happening? That's obviously wrong. Now, are we going to change this? No. What we're going to do is we're going to let it get back. We are going to, like I said, go into the group, and we are simply going to correct the rotation. I think I rotated it this way, so let's rotate it the other way. You're basically just going to correct the rotation. Click out of it, get it back. Let's see if that works again. There it is. Perfect. All right. So that correcting rotation stuff broke my brain for quite a while until I kind of figured it out. It just takes tinkering. Sometimes you have to go in, kind of make small adjustments just to get it the way you want. So all right, so that stuff that's kind of like pitfall number one. Number two, you'll see I can now jump on top of this. Look, it's going pretty well, and look, it's turning. I'm not falling off yet. That's pretty good. You turn a little too much, go down. Oh, there it is. You fall. So there's really no way in Horizon Worlds to like snap yourself and stick to a place. You can kind of snap. There's a snap gizmo over here. Let's see, where is it? Gizmos. There's like a snap destination, but that really just changes your orientation. That's not going to actually make you stick to a platform as it's turning. So one thing that I did when I started making this is I actually created invisible boundaries to thinking that, well, if I create these walls, for example, if I create these walls, they are going to, lock you in place and you're not going to fall out. And then I found that I was actually falling out even more. And I would make these, invisible so that it looked, it still looked nice. But I would find that I fell out even more when I had these in place. So why was that happening? Well, here's what's going on. So imagine this is you. Again, Horizon Worlds doesn't want you sticking to stuff, and it definitely doesn't want you going through stuff. So as this was shifting, suddenly this barrier is starting to go through you, and Horizon Worlds just pops you to the other side of it. So actually, it's a lot easier to stay on a platform when there isn't something pressing against you. So the more stable platforms, the ones that you're going to fall out of less, assuming that they have turning or rotation, are actually going to be the ones without these barriers. So just something that I had to learn by trial and error. But if you create kind of, obviously your ship is going to have sides like this. Just make sure that they're wide enough so that they're not like constraining you too much and you're just popping to the other side of them. But that's it. That's our flying platform with just a few operations. We made it. It matches. You can fly around. That is fantastic. So then, what about other types of flight? We have our TIE fighter, which I said I have actually limited the rotation on. Let me show you. So look at that. You can fly with this. You can turn with it, but if you go down, look at that, see? There's no turning. It's nice and steady. You can actually make this go a little bit faster. It still shoots. Pretty great. So much steadier, much easier flight, but less maneuverability. And the other one that I said, excuse me, N1, thank you. The other one I said I created is this land speeder. This is just a driving script. So you can grab the wheel, and now you're just driving. Look at that. It turns, but nothing else. It stays exactly on the same plane. Exactly like more like a hovercraft in the car. And just like all the other ones, once you let go, it goes back because it's running a very similar script. The only thing I changed on these scripts was that rotation input. So how do we do that? Oh my God, it's sticking. Okay. As we saw on our X-Wing script, the one with full rotation, It's so simple. The rotation variable is this. Again, if you want to make it yourself, just screenshot this. This will give you everything. Really, this page will just give you everything you need to make something fly. And this rotation variable, like I said, super duper simple. On the X-Wing script, it gets a little bit more complicated because what do we have to do? Let's see, where's that script? Oh, come back now. There it is. On the TIE Fighter script, we have all the setups exactly the same way. We have the return script, all the same stuff. All of this, we have the same loop 2 running when the trigger, except loop 2 is different because it's a different script. So you can actually have the same event named different things in different scripts. That's not a big deal. But so the flight script is a little bit more, it's only these 3 lines, but it's still a little bit more challenging. So move platform by forward direction of self times the movement multiplier over speed. Same thing that we had in the X-Wing script. I don't have the upward direction, so I just have the forward direction. So in that respect, it's actually even easier. But the rotation is a little tougher. So what are we going to do? We're going to rotate the platform, not to the position of the rod, but we're going to look toward the forward direction of itself, and then we're going to constrain that. All we're doing here is saying, look at some of the rotation variables, but don't look all of them, right? And we're going to say times the vector 1, 0, 1. So this is the x, this is the y, this is the z. Here it is basically taking out the y vector so that it doesn't read it. And then for the upward direction, it's going to anytime you say look towards, it's going to say this direction, and then it's going to say with up. So you have to fill out both of these. But we don't want to mess with the upward direction. Again, we want to keep this as steady as possible. So I actually multiply this by a vector of 0, 0, 0. There must be a more elegant way to do this. I haven't found it. It took a lot of tinkering just to get to this in a way it works, because what was happening was I would start flying and the whole thing would be constrained exactly like I wanted, but then I would tip the controller over and the whole thing would just flip. Without kind of going through the middle steps, it would just kind of flip over. So it kept on reading inputs. This is literally the only thing that I was able to get to work. So there it is. You can give it a shot. There was a lot of tinkering that I had to do in terms of like the rotation and finding a rotation for both the TIE Fighter and the rod that worked with these inputs. You can actually see, if you zoom in, when you kind of put your cursor over it, you can actually see that this is the Z, this is the X-axis, and this is the Y-axis. So you can actually use these markers to try to position both this, and then you can do the same thing. See, with the rod, you can see that's the X, that's the Y, and it's not reading it, and that's the Z. So that is the kind of controlled flight limited rotation script. Now, for our driving script, this is what's kind of weird, I'll be honest with you. If you, again, all the same stuff, the starting position of the platform, the starting position of the rod, the return script, this just becomes reflexive. You can build these so easily after a few tries. When the object is released, the object in this case is going to be the rod, you're going to send those return scripts, right? It's all exactly the same. When the index trigger is pressed, you're going to send the loop. The loop is what's going to be our motion. And so, yet again, we have our movement, and we're going to have our rotation script. And the movement script, look what I'm doing here. I'm taking out, so it's not just the forward direction of the self times the movement multiplier. It's the forward direction of the self times the movement multiplier times this variable, this vector variable. And again, it's just that you can find a blank vector variable in the values tab. It's just right here, this vector input. All I'm doing here is constraining where it could move. Okay. Same thing with the rotation. I actually think this ends up being the exact same as the TIE Fighter script. Yeah. You're just trying to constrain the inputs that it's getting. Again, I don't think I can go into too much detail of why this works. I tried so many different combinations of this, so many different rotations to get it to work. This is the one that actually did it, so that, again, you have a really smooth, kind of motion. You're not going up, you're not going down, you're just going straight forward and side to side. Now let's go back. Look at that. Oh, the other thing that's worth mentioning is that if you really want to feel like you're actually sitting in it as opposed to just standing on top of it, I recommend making this floor non-collidable, so visible but non-collidable, and then creating an invisible spot here, so that this is what you're actually standing on, kind of like Flintstone style. This is where Horizon World's lack of feet actually makes sense. So you can kind of look like you're sitting in this, but your legs are actually down here. Just a recommendation, no big deal. Follow it or don't. I think that's actually it. I think that's enough, right? We've gone over what the models look like. We've gone over the difference between the rod and the actual platform that's flying. We've gone over the script and really the magic of what makes it fly. Again, it's just this. And then some of the variations to it. That seems pretty good. I think we'll stop there. And in the next video, I'm going to get into all of, again, the alarms, the lasers, the health, everything like that. Okay? And all right, fine. Just as a bonus, I did recently make these two Ahsoka lightsabers. Look at that. Look how beautiful. You can do it. It's so much fun. It's easy. Okay, I also made this Mandalorian gun, and oh my god. I'm just showing off now. Thanks so much for watching. If you have other questions, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, look for the next video where I'm going to make this thing an actual Starship. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.